Plus
you
it's
could
the
see, it looks
Isn't
turned.
the bladder meridian or gallbladder?
Wow.
Gallbladder
God
or
save
whatever.
her. I'm not doing anything with my, I don't know. I just put that thought right out of my head. My gallbladder pain for years. It goes away. It's good. My
Yeah.
father had gallstones, and when I took an x-ray of him because he came in to be a patient when we were doing clinical, the guy goes, look at all the gallstones in his gallbladder. He goes, does it bother him? I go, no, the doctor's only when they move. Then it'll hurt, and once they settle down again, then it doesn't bother him. So I'm thinking it's probably the same thing. And he never had his out, so.
When I
Okay.
went out west, we were walking through just the wilderness basically, and we were in Sedona, and we had a guide that was taking us on, and I'm very interested in herbs and how the earth and different things can help us heal, and so this man was this wonderful Native American guide, and he said, I ran into a patch of something, and I don't even remember what it was at this point. But he said, oh, you must have a problem with your gallbladder. And I said, well, the fact that it's gone physically, yes, I would say that would be an issue. And I said, energetically, I think that the gallbladder is probably still there and functioning.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, must be yours is a little
Overactive?
either overactive or sluggish. And so he said, here, throw this on you. And literally, I could feel a stimulating energy
Oh, wow.
in where my gallbladder is. It's really interesting. So anyway.
Okay. Good?
We're rolling.
Oh, we're rolling, okay.
Yeah.
So, hi, Elizabeth.
Hi.
It's nice to have you here today. When did you
Thank you for
know
having me.
that you had a special gift, or how did you realize that?
How did I realize it?
Or how old were you when you realized that?
I didn't know until I was about 12 years old that not everybody saw what I saw. I grew up in a family. My mom is a medium. She, frequently talked about it. She doesn't work in the same capacity that I do, and so I was about 12 years old, and I was in I was in 6th grade, and I was sitting next to my friend Laura, and we had speakers at school, and they were coming from the nuclear power plant. I grew up, north of way upstate, close to Canada. So we had a nuclear power plant in the area, and we had speakers coming in, and behind them were these just enormous beings of light, what looked like enormous beings of light, and I could see halos and lights around the people that were talking, and I said, oh my God, look at that. I'm saying this to my friend, and she said, look at what? And I had no idea. I had no idea that when other people looked at other people, they didn't see, they didn't see the soul or a light or something shining from them. I had no idea. It was just always a part of who I was. So I always saw lights. I always saw the aura. I always saw something. So I was about 12 before I knew that people didn't see that.
Now, did your mother do readings? Was she involved?
She did not.
She did not, okay.
She always said, you can talk anybody out of anything. And so she said to me that it would be perfect for me. It was one thing to see them and know them, but it was another thing to sit and talk to them all day. And she just wasn't interested raising 6 kids, and there was too much to do. But she very much believed and reinforced it in me.
So when you do a reading or have a session with a client, what is that like for you? Describe how you communicate with the other side. Is it by thought, or is it how do you know that you're communicating?
That's a good question. How do I know? Well, it's easier to say how I don't know, probably.
Okay.
So I know because I can sense their energy or their personality. And I know me, so I know the difference between somebody else and myself, so that makes it a little bit easy. And I see them. So when I first went into practice, and of course I've seen them my whole life, but when I first went into practice, it was very interesting because I would see them all the time, and I would see these horrible things, helping people with grief. And it was just too much. And so I asked, I don't want to remember. I don't want to remember in my conscious, Elizabeth mind. I don't want to remember what I see. So that helped a tremendous amount because it's not always easy seeing some of the things, that people come to me for, especially suicides and murders and things of that nature. So So I sit quietly and I just close my eyes and listen to my soul. I say a prayer because I do believe that there's a connection to be had with some sort of higher self or a higher part of ourselves, our soul. And I just invite them in. I ask them to come, and they show up. I've never word gets out on the other side that you can hear them, so they come running. So, yes.
So as you do this, I imagine that you can, you're in danger of taking on all that sadness and all that energy from the readings. What do you do, or how do you ensure that then that doesn't affect you, or that you don't keep it?
Can we edit this part?
Yes. Yes.
So I've always been a fairly happy person. I've always been somebody that just has a natural love and joy humor, and so I watch the baseball game. I love that, and I participate in things as well. So I like to go out and walk in nature, and I like to swim, and I like to do things, ride my bicycle, those kinds of things. So that helps tremendously. When I'm having a hard time, though, I have to sit and be quiet. I mean, some of the things that I hear and see are really things you can't imagine another human being would do to another person. So that's difficult. So I try to be as active as I can, and if I need to, I talk to somebody about it. It is physically draining for a period of time for me. So. Some people ask me, many people ask me, especially after they're exhausted from their grief, and they're crying and so on. What do I do, And it does the opposite for me. So it keeps me up at night rather than makes me exhausted. But when I do, it just depends on what kind of reading I'm doing and who I'm talking to.
So in your experience, what seems to be the most painful, if you can say, of losing a loved one? Like what, is it losing from what certain circumstances worse than others, do you find, as far as people being able to get past their grief?
To me, watching people suffer is just terrible enough. And so I always made a promise to myself that if I could do anything to help them with my gift, then that's what I wanted to do. So to answer your question, though, I would say probably, maybe it would vary about how people died or how people had a physical death, but more importantly, moms losing children, parents losing children, that's probably the worst. We can pick our spouse, we can pick our loved ones to be around us and who we want, but I believe we choose our parents. Very much so, and for a mom to choose that kind of life, if it's all mapped out for us, predestined, if you will, for a mom to lose her child or a dad, I think that would be the hardest thing, and it's always the most difficult. I mean, you can feel it's palpable in my office when people come in. Other people will come in and say, "Wow, what just happened in here?" Because it's just so much pain. It's so much pain.
Do you feel that some of that is because it goes against the natural order of things as we see them? Like you expect, even though you don't like it, that your parents will pass before you. Your spouse is up in the air. It depends on which one goes first. But we never really consider losing our children first.
Correct. Yes. Most people will say that. I imagine out of the thousands and thousands of readings I've done, that people say to me, I never ever would have ever expected to outlive one of my children. It's not supposed to be that way. But the reality is it is, because you planned it before you came.
Mm-hmm.
I really do believe that we have this part of us that's a soul that lived before, and perhaps we knew the people that we lived with or near or are acquainted with them somehow in this life. Maybe something's incomplete, maybe it completes this lifetime, who knows, but I really do believe that there's a reason for it. I don't know what that reason is always, and many people will ask, but I do believe there's a reason for it. Maybe it helps people grow, maybe it helps people not grow and get stuck. So,
when you do a reading and you have a connection are there a lot of souls on the other side that kind of want to jump in there? Like, and how do you limit, who you speak to?
Oh, that's
From the other
terrific.
side.
That's a great question. So what I do is I just, again, I say a prayer and I call on the people that are on the other side for this person. And I try to explain to people beforehand, I'm not in control of who shows up, right? And don't be agenda driven. When you come for a session or you want to be talking to somebody, if you lose your agenda and you just come to have the session, they'll show up. But often if we just want to talk to this one certain person, we're putting our energy into doing just that. And so we miss out on the other opportunities to talk to the other people that come as well. So sometimes people will maybe work next to somebody. You sit in Cubby World all day and you work next to someone and that person has lost somebody. And sometimes to get the point across, they'll come to the reading of the person in the chair and say, I know my mom, or I know this person. Tell them I'm okay. Tell them to come in and talk. Tell them the nutmeg is in the recipe, and so like they would develop passcodes and things like this before people die, their physical death. And so many times when they come in, they'll say something very significant that will matter to that person. So that's easy to differentiate who they are. But I don't have any control who shows up and who doesn't. And there's only been one instance ever that it wasn't that nobody came. It was the person who they wanted to come didn't come. And so this is a joke that we have in my practice. Italian families are the best, right? Because there's always 100 of them, and family's everything to all of us, I would imagine, or I hope. And so all these people will come, and Aunt Mary and Aunt Susie and Uncle Tony, and not to be too stereotypical, but everybody will show up, and then you're there, and by this time you've talked them to death, right? So there's 20 people in the room at this point. They're all squished up against the wall, and it's ridiculous. And then somebody will say, well, geez, Aunt Elizabeth didn't come, or, this person. And I'm thinking, yeah, but half of the county was just here, So it just really depends on the person and who shows up. And what they want to say. Often people will come for a reading, and this fascinated me the first time that I heard someone say this. I had a woman that come, and she was very, very close to her mother, and she had a lot of disabilities. And so a caregiver of hers and friend came to a group that we had, a meditation group or something, and she said, I really want my friend to talk with you to her mother. And I said, well, give her my number, and I'm glad to do that. And so it was really interesting when she went to talk to the woman to tell her, I'm going to take you, I'll bring you, and because the woman couldn't drive, she was blind. And she said, I don't really have anything to say to my mother. I'm mad at her for leaving. And she said, do you ever think that she has something to say to you? And I thought, wow, that's really amazing. So often they on the other side have something very compelling that they want to say to the people that are coming for a reading. And it really makes all the difference in the world. Most of the time people just want to know they're okay. But, they have a basic conversation. It's just a three-way conversation, like playing telephone.
And do you write when you do readings at all? I know there's automatic writing. Mm-hmm. Do you use any of that, or do you use different techniques?
I do, but I don't do all the hokey kind of nonsense that some people do, and forgive me, but I don't know that tarot cards and things like that, they might be for some people, that's not for me. But I do automatic writing, so I just sit and I'm just quiet for a few minutes, and then I just say, I won't let them sort of use my body, so to speak. I sort of talk to them or with them as opposed to let them come through me, like the movie Ghost, when the bodies come in and they sort of embody the medium. I don't allow that to happen. So I'll just sit quietly and I'll hold the pen, and they'll just start writing, and they write words, literal words. And so sometimes that sort of propagates the reading. Somebody's having a hard time understanding what's going on, or they want to see proof, and so maybe they'll write something on a piece of paper, or they'll draw a picture of what they looked like, or so some people want to know, are there things in the body? So we can do something called remote viewing. So I'll draw a picture of the body, and then I'll just kind of, ask Spirit to tell me what's going on in the person's body. And they'll mark the spots in the body, like, go get this checked, go look at this. Yeah, so it's really...
Is it in your handwriting, or do you write differently?
It's definitely in their handwriting.
In their handwriting, okay.
In my wildest, I have very neat, and I still write in cursive. I have very neat handwriting, and so, some of them are scribbling all over, and you can usually tell male to female handwriting, just like you can in a physical, in our physical body. So it's really interesting. And angels sort of have a swoopy, kind of big loopy lettering and writing. So I have pages and pages and pages sometimes by the time I'm finished. It's usually, forgive me again, it's usually men that have a harder time accepting. And maybe it's because maybe they have more of a logical, reasonable sense about life. I don't know what the reason is. And so often I'll do that for them so that they can see, like, this really is the person that you're looking for. And men usually are there for a couple of reasons. Their wife is making them, or somebody's making them come, or they really want to know something, right? Or they want to prove you wrong. And so automatic writing is a way that we can show them, not give them proof, like, I'm going to prove you wrong, right? But more like give them evidence to show, like, this really is the person. She's or he is right behind you or next to you, and this is what they're saying. And often it'll be exactly what they would talk like, or how they would speak.
Do you find that some people become, I don't know what the right word is, maybe addicted to try to always communicating with them, or that do you feel that people use it too much, or does it interfere with their lives in some way by doing it? I know a lot of people are resistant to going to a medium. Do you find that with people, or do they use it as a crutch?
I won't allow them. I do find, and so for a couple of reasons. I don't give a lot of personal information to people, because when they find out that you can do these kinds of things, so my home and those kinds of things are sort of off limits to anyone, anything of that nature. But I do find that people want to know more, and so I refuse to let people do that. I think you have to take responsibility for your grief. And I don't think you need to rely on someone else to do that for you. It's something that we have to process ourselves. And so, yes, to answer your question, I do find that people want to use a medium all the time, and they can't get through it. And I won't allow that to happen. I really will be very discerning about that. Or if I feel like people are trying to just do mediumship and find people that will do it. We have medium shoppers, right? Yeah. People that will go from medium to medium to medium, hoping somebody's going to tell them not what they need to hear, but the answer that they want. And I refuse to do that. I just say what I hear, how they say it. And sometimes they swear, which is funny when I hear recordings and things, because I'm trying not to do that too often.
And do you remember everything that's said at readings? Because I know a lot of people feel like once you've been to a medium, well, they've taken notes and they know you, and that they may say things that or they're using past information back into another reading. But you don't remember what's being said at readings in general?
No.
Okay.
I'll remember talking to the person, but I won't remember anything that's said. And I prefer that. I really just prefer that. I don't want to take other people's stuff home with me. I'm sorry for them, for sure, but I don't want to take that home with me and walk around with that all the time. So, yeah, so I just ask, please don't let me remember any of this. Let it be helpful to the person, that's in front of me, but I don't want to take it home. So.
And what would you say to somebody who is fearful of having a reading?
What would I say to them? Well, I would say that you have to follow your intuition. You would, if you're fearful and it's not for you, then you probably need to look at why you're fearful. Some people, religion has a huge base, for it. against mediumship and so on. But I can't believe if there's a loving, wonderful God that we all believe is there. Why would any loving, wonderful God not want someone to be able to help other people? It just makes sense to me. So for people to kind of lose their belief system enough so that they can heal their grief, I would say that would be the biggest thing for them. Yeah, it's helpful.
All right.